This story was told to me by my uncle. He worked as an engineer at a research station in Antarctica. According to him, beneath the endless layers of ice, there's something the authorities prefer to keep silent about. In 2018, his team conducted research in the Mariana Trench, the deepest point in the world's oceans. The task was simple: lower an automated probe, collect samples, and gather data from nearly 11,000 meters down. But the expedition was strange from the start. A few days before departure, men in black suits boarded the vessel, not military, not scientists. They didn't introduce themselves, but they had access to all the equipment. In 2018, his team conducted research in the Mariana Trench, the deepest point in the world's oceans. The task was simple: lower an automated probe, collect samples, and gather data from nearly 11,000 meters down. But the expedition was strange from the start. A few days before departure, men in black suits boarded the vessel, not military, not scientists. They didn't introduce themselves, but they had access to all the equipment. "You're not just looking for samples," they told the captain. "You're looking for the source of the signal." A signal? Alex and his colleagues were confused, but no one explained further. They lowered the probe, and it began its descent. The deeper it went, the stronger the signal became. At first, it was just a low hum, but then it grew into something more rhythmic sounds, like a heartbeat. At 10,800 meters, the camera captured something strange. It didn't look like a natural formation, a massive cavity in the ocean floor, its walls smooth as if polished by time or by someone else. Then the signal changed. It was no longer just a hum. It was a voice. A faint, rasping voice speaking in an unknown language. But Alex said the sounds felt like they were seeping into his mind. They conjured images: tentacles writhing in darkness, eyes glinting with cold light, and shadows moving in the depths. "This can't be real," Alex whispered. Suddenly, the camera captured movement. From the darkness, something enormous emerged. It wasn't a squid or a fish. It moved slowly, as if watching them. A tentacle reached for the probe, glowing with strange symbols. The connection cut out. "Bring the probe back up," the captain shouted. But it was too late. The probe was gone. The men in black ordered a return to base and told them not to discuss anything. All records were confiscated, and the team was warned that sharing this information would have unpleasant consequences. Alex came home a different man. He was withdrawn, his eyes darting around as if he feared being watched. One night, as we sat in the kitchen, he whispered to me, "There's something ancient down there. We woke it up. And now it knows we exist." A few weeks later, Alex was found dead in his apartment. The official ruling was suicide, but I don't believe it. That day, I received a message from him. "They're coming. Beware the ocean." Since then, whenever I hear news of missing ships or lost deep-sea explorers, I think Alex was right. We awoke something that had been hidden under pressure and darkness for millennia, and now it doesn't want to go back to sleep. This story was told to me by my uncle. He worked as an engineer at a research station in Antarctica. According to him, beneath the endless layers of ice, there's something the authorities prefer to keep silent about. At the time, I didn't take his words seriously, but after what happened, I don't know what to believe anymore. Uncle Jack was part of a team drilling through ice layers to study ancient climate conditions. One day, they hit a cavity beneath 2 kilometers of ice. But it wasn't just a natural hollow. According to him, the walls were too smooth and the temperature was warmer than it should have been. The team was ordered to descend and investigate the anomaly. Uncle Jack and 3 others ventured into the abyss. He told me that when they reached the bottom, they saw something inexplicable. There were walls, he whispered, smooth, dark, like they were made of black glass, and on the wall symbols, unlike anything I'd ever seen. The team approached and noticed the symbols glowed with a faint blue light. They tried photographing the discovery, but the equipment went haywire, cameras shut off, and compasses spun wildly. Then one of the guys, Michael, decided to touch the wall. That was a fatal mistake. As soon as he touched it, the whole room started to hum. Like someone had activated a system, Uncle Jack recounted. Michael froze, his eyes rolled back, and he began whispering words we didn't understand. A second later, Michael collapsed, and sounds began emanating from the walls. Not mechanical sounds, voices. Quiet, whispering, alien voices. The team bolted for the ropes, scrambling to get out. They hauled Michael up, but he never regained consciousness. Uncle Jack said that as soon as they reached the surface, the station was shut down. Men in black suits arrived, confiscating all records, samples, and photos. They took Michael, and no one ever saw him again. Before leaving, one of the agents approached Jack and said, "You saw nothing. This place is just ice and rock. If you want a peaceful life, forget this incident." Jack tried to forget, but the voices haunted his nights. He kept repeating, "There's something under the ice, it's not human." And it's still there waiting. Years have passed, but whenever I read about new discoveries in Antarctica or hear about sudden closures of research stations, chills run down my spine. What if we unearthed something that was meant to stay buried forever? My grandfather was a military pilot. He rarely spoke about his service, but once, when he was in his 80s, he shared a story that haunts me to this day. It was 1971. His unit was sent on a mission to Antarctica officially for scientific research, but Grandpa said when you hear scientific research and see a bunch of soldiers with weapons, something is definitely off. They were flying over Antarctica when suddenly their radar picked up a massive structure beneath the ice, something so geometrically precise that it couldn't be natural. Squares, lines, triangles, like a city under the ice. Command ordered them to land and investigate. Their team landed at night, the cold cutting through them, snow swirling so heavily that they could barely see. But Grandpa and his crew pushed through to a spot where the ice had cracked, revealing the entrance to a tunnel. It wasn't a cave, Kid Grandpa told me, locking eyes with mine. It was a corridor, and the walls were smooth like glass. They glowed when we got closer. They followed the tunnel until they reached a massive chamber. In the center stood a structure resembling a pyramid. But this wasn't an Egyptian stone pyramid. This thing was black as obsidian and looked older than anything they had ever seen. The walls were covered in symbols similar to those found in the pyramids of Giza. But what the hell were they doing beneath the ice of Antarctica? Grandpa and the team tried to take pictures, but their equipment wouldn't work. Then the pyramid started to hum. A low, unsettling hum, like something ancient and massive was waking up. Suddenly, everything around us started to move, he continued. The tunnel shook, and we heard footsteps, heavy like a giant's. I turned and saw shadows, massive shadows moving toward us. The commander yelled for them to retreat. They ran, not looking back, until they made it to the surface. The helicopter was waiting, and they took off. As they ascended, Grandpa looked down and saw the tunnel closing, like the ice was healing itself. Back at the base, they were ordered to stay silent. All records were confiscated, and the commander said only, "This isn't meant for human eyes. We're not the first on this planet. And we're not the smartest." Years later, Grandpa saw the same symbol that was beneath the ice in reports about discoveries in the Bermuda Triangle. The same lines, the same shapes. He believed that the pyramids in Egypt, Antarctica, and the mysteries of the Bermuda Triangle were all pieces of one enormous puzzle. We're only seeing the tip of the iceberg, he told me at the end, and what's beneath the surface is better left untouched. Grandpa passed away a year after that conversation, and I still wonder, what did he really see? What if these pyramids are ancient machines, and what if they're still functioning? Maybe that's why we're kept in the dark so desperately, because if we knew the truth, it might be more terrifying than we could ever imagine. Okay, guys, I always thought all those stories about pyramids and aliens were complete nonsense. Seriously, who in their right mind believes that little green men came here to build giant triangles in the desert? But one conversation with my grandfather made me question everything I thought I knew. My grandpa was an engineer. He worked with heavy machinery all his life and knew more about construction than most people. One time, during a family gathering, he'd had a few too many drinks and started telling some wild story. "You know, kid, those damn pyramids, they're not just a pile of rocks. It would have taken humans thousands of years to build them." I laughed and said, "Come on, Grandpa, you're joking. Are you one of those alien believers?" And then his face turned more serious than I'd ever seen it. He leaned in closer and whispered, "Have you ever seen the blocks that make up the pyramids? Each one weighs over 2 tons. How the hell do you think ancient Egyptians lifted them without cranes or helicopters? No way. Humans didn't build those." I didn't know what to say. Grandpa continued, "In the 1970s, they sent me to Egypt to work on some government project. They took us to the pyramids, but not the tourist ones. There was another area completely off limits. We were working with huge stone slabs that needed to be examined. And do you know what I found under one of them?" His hands trembled. He paused, and I held my breath. A mechanism. A metallic, shiny mechanism that shouldn't have been inside a damn 4,000-year-old slab. It looked like some kind of engine or device. Then these men in black suits showed up and told us to forget what we saw. Forget everything. I laughed nervously. Grandpa, you're making this up. But his eyes, they were empty and afraid, he whispered. They said it was a matter of national security, but what kind of national security exists in the pyramids? They're hiding something, and it's not human. After that, Grandpa went silent and never spoke about the pyramids again. A few years later, he passed away, and I still think about his words. What did he see in those pyramids? What if he was right and we're still walking around traces of some ancient alien mechanism? Sometimes I lie awake at night and I hear his words. Humans didn't build those. And the more I read about the pyramids, the more I wonder what if we're just scratching the surface of a giant, terrifying mystery?